Hello and welcome. Whoa, Jesus. Restart.
Good start.
We can cut that out in post editing. It's
fine. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Brew Hoop Podcast, episode 44 this time. I'm Adam Paris, co-managing editor of brewhoop.com. Back this week after the guys filled in admirably for me being under the weather last week. So thanks, as per usual, to Kyle Carr and Riley Feldman, who are joining me today. Fellas, how are we doing? The Bucks are still winning, so we have to be in pretty good spirits.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I think if you're looking back at this past week, I don't know if there was such a thing as a trap game per se, but if there was, the Bucks handled all of them pretty mightily. I'm not sure with the latest news that Luka isn't going to be playing on Monday. I don't know the next time the Bucks are going to lose, which is a weird feeling to have. But you have to wonder, is having 18 straight wins given the competition, is that impressive? I think that's an open question. I think I'm excited for one to dive into that today.
And things are good. And also shout out to Wisconsin Herd, who won last night. So now they are on a 12-game winning streak. So state of Wisconsin, professional basketball, undefeated, can't lose. Let's not talk about the college teams because that's just a whole sad story.
Did we just get dropped off again?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Can you hear me, Kyle?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, guys.
What's going on with this connection?
All right. I think I got kicked off. Hold on. I'm moving closer to my router.
All right.
I guess we could just restart, so then you can take all this out.
Or you can leave it. I'll just keep a note on when it starts up again. It's fine. I'll just cut it all out after the fact.
Okay.
And if there are any awkward pauses, I will keep track of that as well, and we can just we'll clean it up after the fact. So
okay. All right.
On it. So do you just want to start anew once more?
Yeah, let's just start anew. That way you can just cut out all this beginning. You don't have to worry about picking out spots. Okay.
All right, cool.
All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Brew Hoop Podcast, episode 44 this week. I'm Adam Paris, co-managing editor of brewhoop.com, making my return after Kyle Carr and Riley Feldman filled in so admirably for me last week while I was feeling under the weather. And once, as per usual, they are joining me again today. So, fellas, how are we doing? 18 straight wins for the Bucks. Can't really quibble with that.
Are you sure about that? Because I might be able to quibble with it. 18-0. I mean, the number's impressive, but once you kind of dive into the stats beneath it, really, is it something to be excited about? I don't know, but I'm excited to talk about it today.
Either way, it's still 18 games, and shout out to Wisconsin Herd. They were able to get their 12th straight win last night. So professional basketball in Wisconsin, undefeated, never lost. College basketball in Wisconsin, absolute train wreck.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the college basketball, but shout out to the Herd. I'm glad you bring that up, Kyle. I think they won an OT or really
Triple
close
OT.
game last night.
Triple OT.
I think.
Oh,
yeah.
Good Lord. Props to the Herd. Big turnaround for them. So, yeah, I mean, but for the Milwaukee Bucks, no need for a turnaround. They've won after, rampaging through the league last year. They're on an 18-game winning streak with no end in sight, obviously. But there might have hit a little hiccup here with Eric Bledsoe, who went out in the Memphis Grizzlies game after Wesley Matthews seemed to collide knees with him, it looked like. And it turns out that what he has is something I've never heard of before, a right fibula avulsion fracture. And guys, I looked a little bit into this because I didn't know two of the words that were in there. And the fibula, for anyone who didn't know, is the bone to the right of your tibia, so sort of on the lateral side of your calf down there. And an avulsion fracture is a bone fracture, this is from Wikipedia, which occurs when a fragment of bone tears away from the main mass of bone as a result of physical trauma. And now I did a little more digging, and it sounds like typically this does not happen to normal people, but it is prone to happen in athletes due to them exerting intense physical pressure and ability on those areas with their feats of strength. So the more important thing beyond all that stupid gobbledygook that I spent too much time looking up, Riley, is that Eric Bledsoe will be out 2 weeks. And we obviously have a couple big games for the Milwaukee Bucks coming up next week against the Mavericks and the Lakers, and then the Christmas Day game against Philly. So what's some of your immediate takeaways for how the Bucks might fill in?
Well, first off, I think we can add Adam Paris, MD, next to co-managing editor of Brew Hoop, because that was a wonderful explanation. We appreciate the research. To the basketball court itself, one, it sucks for Eric, obviously, because it was like a total, like, fluky, like you said, contact with Wes. There was obviously nothing. It was just an accident. And I thought because it was happened so quickly, I thought like Wes clocked Eric in the head, and then Giannis was like picking Eric up off the phone. I'm like, Giannis, don't do that. Which I think it turned out being okay, but I think it's difficult to get a vibe for how it's going to manifest itself on the court, because we haven't, even when Eric had the rib injury, he still played, and obviously he wasn't playing at full capacity. And now I wonder if we have like, it looks like it's going to be Dante who's going to fill in for him in the starting lineup. I don't anticipate there being a huge drop off offensively, probably because now that Dante is playing at such a high level, Wes is really rounded into form the past couple of weeks. Giannis is Giannis. Chris is playing really well as well. And then Brooke even is offensively kind of picking it up a little bit. I think offensively will be okay. What I'm more curious about is, as it is with any time Eric is out, or even if he's not on the floor, when you're facing a team with really, really good guard play, that makes things really difficult, because Dante's a good defender and George Hill is fine and Wes is okay as well, but none of them are nearly as aggressive, but not aggressive out of control aggressive, like a controlled, concentrated aggression that forces opponent offenses to kind of stutter for a moment. And so if Eric is out, and we saw even last night against the Cavs where it's like you have Colin Sexton, who is a really quick guard. You have Darius Garland, who's also pretty quick. And even though neither of them had really great shooting nights, there were a lot of times where they were able to get penetration relatively easily, given the way that the Cavs play. So I would be most curious about that. And I don't think it's going to be the team's going to fall off the face of the earth, obviously. But that's the part where I'm most interested in seeing if there's a drop off, which I think there would be, and if the Bucks are able to resist that a little bit better.
Yeah, and Kyle, in our first glimpse of, I thought the decision to put Dante in there was a little interesting. I mean, obviously we know Bud loves George Hill, but he must really, really like him leading out those bench units. Clearly Dante has had a little experience in the starting lineup earlier this year, filling in for Chris Middleton. But, at least to start, he seemed to play really under control against the Cavs, 15 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals. And I think almost most importantly, just 1 turnover for Dante. But I still thought it was a pretty interesting decision that he was the guy that Bud tabbed.
Yeah, and I think it might have had something to do with the fact that Dante has played with the starters, so it might just be continuing the continuity, which makes sense. I also expected George Hill to slot into the starting lineup just to have another ball handler that can facilitate the playmaking, so the load isn't just on Giannis and Chris. But I think Bud kind of figured you do have Giannis and Chris that are able to do it, and with a lot of the offensive sets they have, it does require players to be able to pass, shoot, and dribble. So to have someone like Dante be able to come in, and as long as he takes care of the ball, it's not going to be too much of an issue. So I think Dante makes sense in the idea of chemistry and continuity. I would probably go George Hill, and maybe it's because they don't have another guard that can handle that playmaking with the bench squads. So I like it, and Dante looked very impressive, including a poster on John Henson, which was the most surreal thing that I have seen. And I'm just glad that all of my hyping up of Dante the last year and a half is coming to fruition.
Well, and you even noticed it last night against the Cavs, how you're saying where if guys can dribble, pass, shoot, etc., if you can do it all, that's great. But even the way that Milwaukee walks the ball up the floor, like in transition, it's pretty much anything goes. Whoever gets the ball goes for it. But when you're walking up the floor, essentially, like, yes, it'll go to Eric if he's out there, but I think everybody who's in the starting lineup is competent enough with at least getting the ball into position to start offensive sets where even if you have Dante out there, you're not going to see a significant drop-off, which is why I'm also, again, not super worried about the way the offense is going to go, because you have other players who can do a reasonable facsimile of what Eric does to paper things over and let Giannis and Chris and everybody else kind of go off.
Yeah, 100%. I think clearly the defensive end of the floor is where we've tabbed Eric Bledsoe as having the most impact, and it'll be curious to see how Dante is able to deal with some of the point guards that maybe. I think Dante is relatively good at fighting around screens. I think that's been one of the things that's pleasantly surprised me, and that's clearly one of Eric Bledsoe's main jobs. Now, the other question is going to be, if Dante has a little bit more load defensively each night, how is he able to contribute some of the same stuff that he does offensively? Are the legs not going to be under him for when he's shooting? I think one of the biggest benefits for Dante, and this was, even though I was have completely done an about face on Dante and ripped the pick at the time. But one of the things I really liked about him was he seemed to have a really acute ability in transition to find the right passing lanes and give it up to guys quickly. And you just saw that multiple times last night. The chemistry between him and Giannis Kyle in transition is just beautiful.
Yeah, and I think it was Justin Superbuck that had mentioned it and how Dante gives the ball to Giannis on the fast break, in which a certain player never did in the past. So I think that's something that is highlighted.
Say his name, Kyle. Say his name.
Okay, fine. Malcolm Brogdon, whatever.
Oh, man.
That was one of the main criticisms that we had about Brogdon, was not getting the ball to Giannis, and that's something that Dante has always been able to do. And I think we always talked about in the past players that, for all their faults, like Jason Terry, Dante, I think OJ Mayo is another one, they knew get Giannis the ball in transition, no questions asked. And that is a good sign, because obviously we said anyone that gets a fast break, you just go and run with it. But Giannis is such a force, and you don't know if he's going to Europe step past you, if he's just going to run you over and dunk it on you. He's able to make that pass, and just getting him the ball, and as long as you're within a good passing angle for him, he's going to get you the ball, and you can get the easy layups, kind of like what we saw primarily in the second half of that game. Something that I also thought about is, without Eric Bledsoe, yes, it kind of hurts in terms of the defensive capability, but when you look at the next couple weeks, it's not like Milwaukee is playing that many teams with a pure point guard. You got the Mavericks without Luka. I don't know how that team looks. You have the Lakers, and LeBron is the primary playmaker. Then you have like the Knicks, Pacers, Sixers have a coward at point guard. The only team that has a pure point guard is the Atlanta Hawks and Trae Young, and you would think that Dante would be able to handle that responsibility as well. So it's going to hurt defensively, but at the same time, they're thankfully not playing teams that have pure point guards that could cause issues for Milwaukee.
No, it sounds like you're shortchanging Markelle Fultz and the big one, Malcolm Brogdon.
Is Malcolm going to duck us?
I stand by what I said.
I really hope not. I think it just kind of jumping on your point, Kyle. I agree that, and it's not even just Dante. Like Dante and Giannis, how you pointed out, Adam, they have really good chemistry. But there have been multiple times where it's like Dante and Chris or Dante and George Hill kind of trailing. So, and it's not even just Dante as well. There were a couple of times where we all know Chris is a pretty good passer, like a creative passer, but there were times where he's driving to the basket and then he kind of goes between the legs, like kicks it out to Brook Lopez on the perimeter for like a three. So I think I would be interested, I don't have the stats right in front of me, but to see the playmaking numbers this year versus last season, just, passing numbers, how often it's getting moved around, things like that, because it feels a lot more fluid than it did even a year ago. And how much of that is Malcolm Brogdon, how much of that is the rest of the system, things like that. But again, if we're looking at that as that's going to be a primary style of play, which it looks like it's going to be, then not having Eric Bledsoe is not that big of a deal. Which, Adam, I'm not sure. In your research, did you see how long these injuries generally last? Because I know the Bucks said 2 weeks, but I don't know if you saw anything else, given timelines or anything.
No real timelines. Just the one that I read just said a lot of it is rest and ice, and none of them talk specifically about injuries specifically like to the fibula itself. They mostly talked about avulsion fractures on the foot or the hip, which seemed like they would last longer. So maybe this one isn't quite as severe, but also don't take anything that I just said to mean anything worthwhile.
Not a doctor.
No. I think the point you make is interesting though, Riley, because one of the things that clearly we were all thinking that the Bucks needed this year to replace he who must not be named, but we've already said multiple times, is an ability for their guards to be able to play make. And I think this should be a really good litmus test for Dante DiVincenzo. Last night he passed with flying colors, but how much is he able to take guys off the dribble and kind of get to the rim and maybe get his own shot? How much is he able to create for other players on the team and kick out? And we've certainly seen glimpses of that, but just having a little bit larger sample size in a more elevated role, I think, will be beneficial for this team.
Yeah, and how crazy is it? Like, up until how many weeks into the season was the Magic game? It was like 2 or 3 weeks, I want to say, before we actually played the Magic, and that was like Dante's first big breakout. And you have to give credit to both him and Budenholzer, how consistent they've been with giving him the minutes, and obviously he's totally earned them. It's, it's not just giving him minutes for the sake of giving him minutes, but the fact that he's been able to respond to the new responsibilities and kind of the heavier workload, it's a huge credit to him, and obviously huge egg on at least me and you, Adam, our faces a year ago after the pick. So shout out Dante. I don't know if we'll get a formal Dante's Inferno, but I think we can pretty much tab the entire start of this podcast as an extended Dante's Inferno while talking about Eric Bledsoe.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Lot of egg for pasta making on our face.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, speaking of that Magic game, a couple weeks in, the Bucks played the Magic again. We'll get into some of our game recaps here. That first win this past week was a 110-1-0 win victory against the Orlando Magic. Giannis had 32 points, 15 boards, 8 assists, ho-hum. Took it to Jonathan Isaac down low a couple times, really showed off his strength and ability to get past him, despite the fact that Isaac, I had not realized how good of a year he had been having defensively, that he was getting like Defensive Player of the Year talks. But holy wow, that dude is good at blocking shots. So kudos to that guy. I mean, he seemed like he would be a beast coming out, but he's really seemed to elevate his game. Magic shoot just 32% from deep. Bucks are hot, shoot 39%. Any big takeaways from that one, Kyle, that you recall?
Not really. It was kind of impressive how the Magic were able to stay in the game. Because a lot of the times Milwaukee sometimes lets teams get close and they're able to blow the doors off of them. And that didn't happen in this case with the Magic. They were just kind of, it seemed like they were going to get away from it near halftime. But I will give props to Orlando. They're a pesky team. They don't really have a superstar. They have a good collection of guys that would be fantastic role players on championship teams. And now that they're healthier, I think that helps them as well. I wouldn't be surprised if this team gets a 7 or 8 seed in the playoffs, but I'll give props to them. They kept it close. They never necessarily shriveled and kind of lost the game. They just were able to consistently chip in get a little 5-0 run or get a 6-3 run, just able to put together stretches where the game wasn't going to become a 20-plus lead for the Bucks. It was always going to be that annoying 10 to 15 range where a couple shots fall and Orlando was right back in it.
Yeah, and especially with Vucevic out. Sorry, go ahead, Riley.
No, I was just going to say, and it kind of piggybacking off of that, it's not totally unprecedented because in that first game of the season, especially in the first quarter, it was really tight. And even though the Bucks ended up scoring 31 points in that game in the first quarter, the Orlando Magic were able to kind of keep pace offensively. Eventually, the Bucks kind of pulled away, but it was not unprecedented to see the Magic at least be pesky given their length. And if the Bucks are in the right mindset, then it's pretty easy to get around. But if you just have kind of like a slightly off offensive night, then obviously their just defensive instincts and their size makes things difficult. And obviously it was going to prove out in the end that Milwaukee's talent was able to get through. But it's not super surprising that even though if you look at the Orlando Magic's record or their stats, it's not super impressive, there's still like a top half of the league defense. And that shows in a game like this where it's just sort of ugly, even though Giannis and Chris both get their stat lines.
Yeah, that's kind of how that game felt, and this was a week of kind of teams, plucky teams, sticking with the Bucks a little bit more than us just the Bucks blowing the doors off the team. Didn't see a whole lot else from that Magic game, but it was semi-instructive win last Wednesday against the New Orleans Pelicans, 127 to 112. Giannis sits for the first time this season with quad soreness. In his stead, Eric Bledsoe has an incredibly hot shooting night, 29 points, 5 of 6 from deep, and that's only on 13 shots. So 29 points on 13 shots is just insanely efficient. Chris Tabbs, 24 points as well. Riley, was there anything from that Pelicans game that stood out?
Ersan Ilyasova heard all the haters. That's what stood out to me. He was like, "What? You think I'm done?" And he comes out and gets 18 points off of 8 of 10 shooting and 2 of 3 from 3, and 9 rebounds too. It was a hell of a performance from Ersan. No, I think it was super typical where, as we say over and over again, if you get one of Chris or Eric, great. If you get both of them, even better. And we happen to stand up in this situation, and both of them play really, really well. And obviously, I think what was the biggest takeaway, not only the deep or the hot offensive night for Eric and Chris, was the contrast of New Orleans, where I think, let me see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys just 4 guys for New Orleans scores in double digits. And obviously Brandon Ingram, JJ Redick, and Drew Holiday, they all get 20 plus points. But after that, it's like everybody else is 2 points, 4 points, 2 points. Whereas you go over to Milwaukee and you have 1, 2, 3, 4 guys again who are scoring double digits, but a lot of other guys like 9 points, 7 points, 8 points. So I think what was most encouraging is even without Giannis, you can rely on the top 2 guys. And we're at a point now where the system and the talent is so deep where you're able to even beat like, a scrappy but still not great New Orleans team in this sort of situation.
Yeah, and once again, JJ Redick continues to seem to not miss against the Bucks. That was he was just shooting the lights out that night. That was insane.
I think he'd look good in Bucks green. I don't know. There's some sort of feeling I get that maybe he was built for Milwaukee. You know what I mean? So I don't know if we'll ever commit and try and get JJ, but I don't know if I need to see the JJ experiment again in Milwaukee. I think I'm hard pass on that one. As good as he still continues to be deep into his career.
Yeah, 100%. Got to be that had to be one of the biggest bummers for ESPN for nationally televised games without Zion and not even getting Giannis. I don't even know what. Yeah.
Well, that's their punishment for setting up for an 8:30 start Central Time. So whatever. I don't even.
Yeah, I don't know who thought that was a good idea. I'm mad at that person that made the decision because I was not happy. I was not happy by the end of the game. Let's just say that.
Well, isn't that how it always goes? Like it's the one's a little earlier, and then it just like it's a little bit happens to be a little bit later.
Yeah, but the later one is normally a West Coast or Mountain team. It's not in this, Central Time zone.
But Kyle, New Orleans is a Western Conference team. I don't know what you're talking about. So
yeah, we're gonna. I hate that they are in the West, and also that Memphis is in the West. They need to rearrange that because those 2 cities are just as east or further east in Memphis's case than Milwaukee. Let's make sense geographically, people. Come on.
Yeah, I try to keep my grousing as an East Coast guy to a minimum, but yeah, sometimes it is pretty tough when these games are at like 9:30. The worst was watching the China Bucks Summer League game that wasn't tip off till like 10:30 out here. That one was really hard to watch.
A lot of good memories, though. A lot of good memories from that game, so that's what matters most.
Oh, speaking of Memphis being in the wrong conference, the 127-114 win for the Bucks against the Memphis Grizzlies.
This is a
last
weird
Friday
one.
evening. Right. I was just going to say that. It was like probably one of the weirdest games I can remember of this year.
Yeah, where do you even begin? I mean, like the top line is obviously Jaren Jackson Jr. going for 43 points and shooting 33 pointers in the third quarter and keeping them alive. But also, like, how many personnel fouls were there? There were 21 fouls against the Bucks, 26 against Memphis. And yet, even through all that, Giannis still gets 37 points and 11 rebounds in 27 minutes. So it's still a moot point at the end of the day, but it was just a strange game from top, like weirdly intense, close up until the final half of the fourth quarter. Like it was just a strange game. Yeah,
it was kind of odd because I never felt like the Bucks were going to lose that game, but it was at the same time, okay, when is this run going to happen? Let's go. Come on, Bucks. Let's get this lead. And then I think they had it at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and Memphis took it right back. It's like, if they're going to lose on the road to Memphis without Ja Morant, that's going to be the weirdest game to compound all the other weird stuff that happened. And then finding out that Giannis is super, super petty. I think this was one of those games where if they had lost, we would have looked back and kind of like the Suns games last year, where if the Bucks had lost, we would have been like, what? How did this happen? Yeah. This doesn't make sense. But thankfully, Giannis went into full effect in the fourth quarter, and Bruno Calabocco is reaping what he sowed after what he did in the summer, apparently. I did not think Giannis was this petty, but I am all for it.
We welcome it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and just for some context, if people don't know, that you should definitely read Eric Name's article on The Athletic if you have a subscription, or just subscribe because there's great stuff there.
Just get The Athletic.
Yeah, it's worth it. But anyway, so apparently during Greece's game against Brazil in the FIBA, some level of the FIBA World Cup, it might have been like the quarterfinals or something, Bruno Caboclo knocked away a ball that was like intended for Giannis or something, so that Greece was knocked out of the tournament. Giannis's teammate, Giorgio Papagiannis, shout outs to him, told Giannis that Bruno was on Memphis. Giannis says, all right, well, watch that game. Giannis said this game circled on the calendar for a random loss against Brazil in the summer, and that's why he was so hot at Bruno Caboclo, a journeyman man who barely has made it back into the NBA after like a year away.
He's just 2 years away from being 2 years away. His Bruno, I believe.
One of the best quotes ever about a prospect. Even more so than that, though, just like weird stuff like the Grizzlies may be true to form, given that they're built in, Bud's. Taylor Jenkins is building them in Bud's bearded image. 49 3-point attempts, the most any opponent has had against the Bucks this whole season. Jaren Jackson Jr. going on that scores 26 in the third quarter alone. I can't remember what like the record is that Klay Thompson has for most points in a quarter, but like can't be super far off.
It felt like we were getting closer. Like, is this really happening right now? Is this happening?
I mean, he banks one in, and then apparently Giannis is just on the bench fuming the whole time, and his quote is like, "Someone needs to stop him," and then he just comes in and completely decimates Memphis in the last quarter, 17 points alone in the fourth quarter, and then gets to sit like the last couple minutes. Like it turned very quickly from the Bucks looking like a potential upset to all of a sudden the Bucks have a comfortable lead. Let's see. Anything else noticeable from that game? I mean, I think just the fact that, even if teams feel like they have some hope and they're hitting their shots at an incredible clip, 40.8%, 20 of 49 from three for the Grizzlies. You just see that the Bucks are still taking away a huge aspect of their game. The Grizzlies are I believe they're like top 5 in terms of points in the paint in the league, and the Bucks more than doubled them up. 54 points in the paint for the Bucks, 26 for the Grizzlies. That just shows that the Bucks, even if one team's succeeding at one element, the Bucks can still be really successful at taking away another.
And I think what also is impressive is you lose Eric Bledsoe in the first half, and you kind of have to a little bit scramble on the fly to kind of fill in the gap, and you toss out Dante, or you toss out even more Wes Matthews, or George Hill ends up getting 30 minutes. So I think what was most notable was it was a sloppy game for Milwaukee, like 17 turnovers, 21 fouls, and it was not exactly the height of beautiful basketball, which isn't all that surprising, I guess, when you're playing your essential like twin in the Memphis Grizzlies, or your proto twin. I thought what was most impressive is just the fact that, like Kyle was saying, and how you both guys have said, even though they were falling a little bit behind, I don't know what the biggest Memphis lead was, but it felt like it got pretty close to double digits in the third quarter, and yet there was this sort of grinding, not in the way that the Grizzlies used to be, like grit and grind, but there is this sort of grind that the Bucks put on you where systematically, even though like Taylor Jenkins, he clearly would, of all the coaches in the league, would have the best idea what the Bucks are going to do, they were able to just stop Memphis in the right ways, kind of put the clamps on Jaren Jackson Jr., and then on the offensive end just kind of do Bucksy things, and ends up being a double-digit win in the end, even though it shouldn't have been at the start of the fourth where it was so close, and I think even Memphis might have had a slight lead. So it's just impressive that you are able to withstand a huge hot shooting end from a guy like that. You lose your lead point guard halfway through the game and still come out with a win. Like, yeah, 18 straight wins isn't all that impressive, I guess, but that was a pretty impressive win regardless, even if it isn't like the greatest competition.
Yeah, I agree. I also do think it speaks to the Bucks' power. Like, I think the Grizzlies, you're right, we're getting close to double-digit leads, and my wife has gotten insanely into betting live bets during all these games. Like, it's an incredible turnaround for me being afraid to tell her that I bet, and now she's like, yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I'm just like 150 in the hole this year so far, but I think I'm going to make it all back. But like even when Grizzlies were up, it was still the Bucks spread was like Bucks were still favored by half a point or whatever. So it speaks to the Bucks' power. One small thing that I did want to note that I think is kind of heartening for the potential for Bud to make adjustments, which I know is kind of a thing, and I felt like he did make adjustments last year in the playoffs, but it might crop up again. Is a guy like Robin Lopez. I think at different points in this year, Rolo has certainly played well, but there have been games where he's just absolutely gotten rolled, and it was clear he didn't have a place out there for this in this Grizzlies game, and it didn't feel like Bud felt obligated to go back to him in the second half, which I think is a good sign, and recognize that wasn't the spot where Robin Lopez was going to be able to succeed, and I feel like there could be a pull from him. Just given he was a big free agent signing, he's Brooks' brother, and sometimes Bud can get stuck in his rotation ways. So I thought that was good to see that Bud didn't try and put him back out there, knowing he might get rolled over.
Yeah, I think it not even just Robin Lopez, but some of the lineups that Bud was forced to use out there, the offensive approach they had to do when Giannis was on the bench, for example. It's a little concerning still to me that in order for Bud to feel like he can experiment, he has to have it forced upon him by either dudes getting in foul trouble or a guy like Eric going out with injury. But theoretically speaking, some experimentation is better than none at all. And like I said, they were able to do a little bit of experimentation even with the lineups and still come away with the wins, which is hopefully will convince Bud to kind of tinker with things a little bit earlier in the playoffs, but that remains to be seen, I guess.
Yeah, and then of course the last one was the 125-108 victory over the Cavs. Giannis had 29 points in that one. Chris had 19 points, 8 of 11 shooting for Chris in the first half. I would say probably the biggest interesting storyline was Dante with the 15 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and just 1 turnover, given that was the big change. The rest of it was kind of pretty similar to what it's been for Bucks victories in the past. And Cavaliers gave them a decent run, but Bucks just pulled away in the end. So it didn't wind up being all that close. But had to be nice for you, Kyle, to see Dante DiVincenzo. I think before pregame now, I think he's the Bucks steals leader. So his mug is up there next to Giannis.
Yeah, it was up there last week as well, which was pretty cool to see. And it's his ability to get a hand on passes. I think if he's not leading the league in deflections, he's got to be top 5. And his ability to get in those passing lanes and get a hand on those passes and just setting up the deflection really is one of the key contributions he makes on the court. And that's what I think why he's been able to get all these steals is, get a hand on it and may go to another player, but I think that you still get the steal credit, which is pretty nice. And also I want to give a shout out to Chris, especially in that first half. He looked like someone that wasn't going to miss, and I was wondering if he was going to get up to 40, and unfortunately he doesn't. He kind of cooled off and didn't really get as many shots in the second half, but this past week, I think Chris has averaged at like 23, 24 points a game, and he's quietly getting back to those numbers that he had before the injury and last year, which that's a positive sign for the Bucks, as they need him to be that guy. And if he's going to do it in the quietest way possible, that's a bonus, especially with that new contract. Seeing if he can get that all-star bid. Now that Eric Bledsoe's hurt, he might have a chance to improve those numbers. So just having Chris getting back to his old self is a positive sign to go along with Dante's defense. I think those were the 2 big takeaways in that Cavs game.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned Chris. I just like his game. It's kind of easy to overlook it, how consistent and well he's playing. I think they said on the broadcast he's shooting almost 50% from deep in December or in the last month or something. But his 3-point percentage is really ticking up there. And weirdly, Riley, I've grown fond of his mid-range game, because I feel like almost every time I see him miss, it feels weird to me. But it's like a nice little contrast to the Bucks' helter-skelter pace that they're playing at, like the fastest pace in the league. So I've grown a little bit fond of him doing some weird little working at the elbow.
Yeah, I was actually last night. I was thinking the consistency is what's most impressive, which is why it's so off-putting when he does have an off night, because the way that he plays, it doesn't lend itself like there are specific players who are going to necessarily be able to stop him. It's more so, does he stop himself if he's having a good or a bad shooting night? But between the Memphis game and the Cavs game last night, there are times where in the flow of the offense, it feels like he's almost getting a lot more shots where opponents are either crashing a little bit more into the paint, or they're expecting him to drive or kick or whatever it is, and then he suddenly finds himself alone on the mid-range and he just takes it and makes it. And it's impressive to see him get back to this form. And again, what's most probably encouraging about Chris is the fact that we're in year however many here that he continues to play the exact same game. He's like Ursan Ilyasova light, except a little bit more of a accomplished scorer, I would say. But you're right that his mid-range game, it feels really strong right now. He's having the best shooting, whatever shooting year of his career. Like he's shooting 50% from the floor completely, 41.3% from 3-point, and then 55.2% from 2, for an effective field goal percentage of 57.7. So it's, even though he had the injury, that hasn't stopped him whatsoever from putting together the numbers. And lo and behold, who would ever have guessed having a not crazy high usage guy who's a really good shooter from pretty much every part of the floor would be really helpful next to Giannis. Like, strange logic there, but good for Chris and good for everybody who is a big Chris backer for at least, as strong of a start as he's had this season so far.
Yeah, I totally agree. And let's end it out on that. So then Chris is the final note. He can get a little limelight to himself. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side of this, we're going to preview the big Western Conference games that are upcoming for the Bucks. And then definitely you're going to want to stick around for an absolutely epic Vulture Talk 2-parter. Riley's really, really pulled some good stuff here. So you're going to want to stick around for that. Stay tuned. All right, we're back. Let's talk about this Western Conference games that are coming up. Prove it week, as I feel like it's time for the morning shows are going to call it. Sadly, we are going to miss Luka Doncic, it sounds like, for the Monday matchup against the Bucks. So that game that was once marquee loses a little bit of its luster. But we're going to do a little bit deeper dive than we usually would for a game that's upcoming into this Los Angeles Lakers game. I guess before we do that, Kyle, anything that you want to just say about the Mavs game before we move on to this Lakers?
The Bucks should theoretically win relatively easily without Luka on the Mavericks team, but it'll be interesting to see how Kristaps Porzingis kind of steps into that go-to role. He hasn't had to do it since his time as a Knick, and of course, when you are a New York Knick, nothing well goes for you. So to see him do it in a more stable, quote-unquote stable environment, at least with a better coach, it'll be interesting to see how he does matching, and if he's going to be matched up on Giannis or if he's going to try and hover around and stay with Brook. And on the defensive end, who does Milwaukee throw on Kristaps? I could see Brook Lopez doing a little bit, but because Porzingis' ability to shoot from outside, it might make more sense to have Giannis out there. So I think that's really the only thing that's worth watching for in this match now that Luka is unfortunately injured, and hopefully speedy recovery to him.
Yeah,
Bucks,
I agree.
I was just going to say the Bucks are going to wax the Mavericks. I guarantee it. It's going to be a slaughter. Like, it's tough to, I guess I shouldn't make a bold proclamation like that, but just looking at their system, like, it's pretty much all Luka offensively. Like, obviously there are other guys, but I'm not looking up and down the rest of the roster and saying, oh, this guy, I mean, maybe somebody gets hot like Tim Hardaway, but I'm skeptical of that. So I anticipate a complete waxing of the Mavs. It would be strange if they didn't.
One thing I had forgotten about with Kristaps Porzingis is I'm pretty sure this will be the first time he's faced the Bucks since he was injured against the Bucks in that, what was that, February of 2017 or something?
Yep.
So I think this will be the first time they've faced the Bucks. And him and Giannis had kind of a nice little budding rivalry going there. And then Giannis obviously has exploded since then. And
so did Kristaps' knee.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
Lawsuits.
Come on, man. We can't say that happened to Jabari so many times.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everybody.
Just replace the knee with exploding lawsuits.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Moving on to the Lakers. Okay. I'll just lay some base stats and then I'll kick it over to you, Riley, to start to just talk about the game. So, Lakers overall, these are all cleaning the glass. I checked them before last Saturday's games or whatever. So if they're off, sue me. Lakers are third in point differential overall, fourth overall in offense, which is points per 100 possessions, seventh in defense. They are leading the league in terms of outperforming their expected wins. So basically, based on their point differential, there's a calculation for how many wins they would be expected to win. They've won 3.3 more wins than what they would be expected to win at this point. So you could say they're, quote unquote, been the luckiest team in the league to this point. They are defensively, they are top five in terms of forcing turnovers. And we all know that that's something that the Bud really prides himself on is making sure that the Bucks do not turn the ball over. So that'll be an interesting cross matchup. They're also top 10 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. And another thing that Bud prides himself on, making sure that the Bucks get their defensive rebounds. And then really where they make their hay is that they take the third highest percentage of shots at the rim in the league. Once again, of course, the Bucks do their best to protect the rim. There's some interesting cross matchups, Riley, in terms of where the Lakers are successful at stuff and then stuff that the Bucks pride themselves on taking away from teams.
Yeah, I think what's most interesting going into this game is, like I said, there's all the stylistic matchups, but it's curious because the way that the Lakers have played so far this season is you obviously have Anthony Davis and LeBron James, who are your top two guys. Like, they pretty much run everything and rightfully should run everything. And then once you get past that, it's very Bucksy in that there's a lot of role players who are excelling in the roles. Like, I mean, even Rajon Rondo is shooting 47.5% from three. Like, I don't think that's going to be sustainable per se, but guys like KCP, Danny Green, Avery Bradley, from top to bottom throughout their entire roster, it seems like, I don't know if it's necessarily a systemic thing or just the fact that you have these other two guys who are drawing so much attention that it gives everybody else the ability to excel. And so I'm curious, yes, stylistically, but I'm more so wondering who's going to be assigned to what to try and, especially on defense, how that's going to work, because we've seen the Bucks play good defensive teams, and eventually they do figure it out, like whether it takes a half or a quarter or however long to kind of get things going. But what I'm curious is, what are the Bucks going to do to slow down Davis and LeBron? Or if they can't slow them down, do they let them go off and then try and shut down everybody else? So that's what I'm most, I wouldn't even say worried about, because at this point, once you win 18 straight, even if you do lose, it's not the end of the world. It's a curious question, especially without Eric, where it doesn't seem like the Lakers, they don't, like Kyle was saying earlier, LeBron is the main playmaker. So does that even matter? Are you able to get enough through Dante? So that's what I'm going to be looking for, is especially just watching how the Bucks play on defense.
Yeah. And I mean, Kyle, the marquee matchup, who do you think will be taking on the task of guarding LeBron or Anthony Davis?
I could see Chris Middleton taking on LeBron while Giannis focuses on Anthony Davis. And it wouldn't surprise me if Bud decided to, kind of like how he does with James Harden, allow a slight change in the way they approach it. I mean, it could be that they could throw someone like Wes Matthews on LeBron and let Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez double team Anthony Davis and just let Giannis wreck havoc all over the place and kind of just let him be a free roaming safety, similar to how he was in Jason Kidd's scheme. So I would realistically say Chris Middleton would take LeBron, and Giannis guards AD, but would not be shocked if Bud decides to have Wes Matthews focus on LeBron, so that way Chris could still have some legs to provide some offensive firepower.
I don't know. I mean, I love. Wait, I shouldn't say that. I don't love Wes. I'm okay with Wes, but I'm not sure if I would advocate now. Man, that would be quite the challenge if Wes had to. Why not put Dante on LeBron? Let's just see what they can do. Let's just put Dante out there. I mean, Wes has been good defensively, but I'm not sure if he's guard LeBron still at his apex good. So I'd be curious to see. Like,
well, the only one that can do it is Giannis.
That's true. Yeah. But then if I look up the shooting percentages, because I think Anthony Davis, he hasn't been taking that many threes. And so I wonder, maybe Giannis will get the LeBron call, because there's going to be a lot of Brook Lopez just playing inside to try and deny Anthony Davis. And so maybe you just put your best guy on their best ball handler and see how it goes. I don't know.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, so I was curious about this because JaVale McGee has been the starting center, all year, because they're kind of Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis is
reticent
coward
to be the center.
No, or that.
Yes,
reticent is a good way to put it as well.
Or also he's a coward. And he's shooting 34.1% from three. Davis is on 3.5 attempts. LeBron's at 36.3%. I think it's just a really interesting matchup, because I think it's actually going to be a very good test for the Bucks, because even with JaVale McGee as the center, whatever, that's just a massive 3-4-5 for the Bucks to have to deal with, given that they're, they have the 4 and 5 big ones in Giannis and Brook, but their 3 is Chris Middleton, and he's big, but he's against that front line, that's just a completely different animal to try and take those guys to task. So I think it's really going to be interesting to also see how Bud manages his bench. Like, this could be a good test to see, is Ersan Ilyasova just going to get roasted against a front line like this in the playoffs?
Absolutely.
Is this a game? Well, but so then will Bud try out DJ Wilson, right? I mean, my
absolutely not.
inclination would be no, he would not try that out. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, if they get super exposed, is he going to try something different? I just think there's a lot of the Lakers present really interesting matchup challenges that I think will be educational for the Bucks, hopefully going forward.
Well, and not even just educational for the Bucks against the Lakers, but even you're right that it's so rare to see a team these days play such a large lineup. Like we saw the match the other day, and they have like length. I'm not sure if I would say they're necessarily like a huge team in the way that we're kind of talking about it here, but even against like the Sixers, given how tall their starting lineup, like what lessons do you get from this Lakers game that you're able to hopefully apply to the Sixers? Because those are going to be theoretically in the playoffs, two teams that you're really going to have to worry about where, we'll see how the brackets line up, but there's a possibility that you play the Sixers in the playoffs and you also have to play the Lakers in the playoffs to, go to the final or, to win the final. So I agree that this will be instructive, maybe not for the rest of the season, except in very specific matches, but how does Bud move around? Because much as we all love Ersan, we saw last year that just defensively, I don't think he necessarily has it in like really crunch time minutes. And against a big lineup like this, he might just get knocked over a lot, which that's just kind of part of his game. But I don't know how that's going to work out over the course of 7 games.
Yeah, I'm also is Costa still with the team? He's played in 2 games.
He's actually he actually, I think they called him up. They either called him up or he will make some sort of appearance, whether it's on the bench or something.
Okay. Well, so might have 3 Antetokounmpos there. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, the other interesting part is just seeing which is this game going to come down. I mean, usually it almost always comes down to which superstar is going to perform, but like which bench guys are going to step up for these teams. I mean, Danny Green really, he did some good stuff for the Raptors against the Bucks, but he was missing a lot of shots still. But when you look at the depth, I guess I trust the Bucks depth more. I mean, Avery Bradley seems kind of washed. KCP is KCP. I don't know. People really like this Alex Caruso guy. I don't really know a whole lot about him.
That's because he's relatable to a lot of the quote unquote average NBA fan, I think.
Exactly. Like, he's a fine player. He's fine. But no, if he wasn't balding and white, we would not care as much.
I think I think what's interesting is, like you said, Adam, which superstar shows out. And I would say arguably that Giannis is a better, quote unquote, once you get to the top 5, it's really hard to break it down from one player to the next. But you could say that Giannis at his peak is probably better than Davis or LeBron. So then does he play well enough? Like, it's a lot of this might come down to how much can Chris kind of keep pace with their second guy. And then after that, because yes, the Bucks depth is pretty consistent, but if Chris isn't having like a really good night, then it's going to put a lot more emphasis on Milwaukee's bench. And as good as they've been, when you're playing a team like the Lakers, where you have 2 such dominant players in Davis and LeBron, you need Chris to step up. And so it's going to be a really big referendum as well on him. And how much of an asterisk is there going to be because Eric isn't out there, or, whatever. It's like, oh, they won, 19 straight. It was bound to end at some point. But that would be interesting as well, as how much people take away either positive or negative with the way Chris plays as well. Because I think no matter what Giannis does, he's going to get his numbers, or, it'll be just he didn't get enough help or whatever. But what is Chris going to do, and how does he play offensively to kind of help keep pace for the rest of the team?
Yeah, I think that's just going to be a huge story. Anything else you want to say about that one, Kyle?
Not really. It'll be a good matchup. I think it's a win-win for Milwaukee, because even if they lose, it's going to be because LeBron and AD were better than Giannis and Chris, which is expected, and that's fine. But if the Bucks win, not only does the winning streak continue, but for those that are quote unquote unimpressed with the teams that the Bucks have beaten, they will have beaten both LA teams. They will have beaten the Mavericks. So you're looking at the top 2 teams, 2 or 3 teams in the Western Conference, plus all the other teams that Milwaukee has beaten in the course of this winning streak. So I don't think the Bucks go out of this game looking worse unless they just get the floor. Unless they just get run off the floor, then that might be a concern.
Yeah, I really don't think this game matters much to Milwaukee, especially in the quote-unquote narrative field, because, I mean, we waxed the hell out of the Clippers a week and a half ago, and nobody said anything about it. So even if we wax the Lakers, nobody's going to talk about it. So not that I mind, but I'm not concerned about, especially, it's tough to be like, oh, it's regular season's not that important. I believe it is still important to some extent, but even if you lose this, it's like you were saying, Kyle, it's not the end of the world, and it's one of 82, and you hopefully just get some lessons out of it more than anything.
Agreed. I don't know, but I'm pretty jazzed. I'm pretty excited for this game. I really like running these teams off the court and beating the Knicks by 40 or whatever, but this is going to be pretty fun. I'm excited. I feel like we haven't gotten like a Giannis, LeBron, really cool matchup with them at like the height of their powers ever.
Yeah, we'll see whether or not anybody actually ducks out at the last second either, because if national TV games so far this season are to be any sort of rubric, we're going to probably miss LeBron or something. Or alternatively, we're going to get stuck with Chris Webber and Marv Albert again, and we're going to be getting a lot of Nikola Mirotic commentary. So either way, we might end up losers regardless. But hopefully, like you said, it holds together and it ends up being a good game. I think it will be, and fun that it'll be in Milwaukee too, so we don't have to be up super late at night, and it should be good atmosphere.
100%. All right. Well, that concludes our big Lakers, our huge Lakers preview. So let's move on to some of our last couple segments here, starting first with rapid fire questions. Take us away, Kyle.
All right. So we're going to start with a very simple one. Do you prefer pancakes, waffles, or French toast?
Pancakes.
Waffles.
Ooh. Interesting. Favorite season?
Man, I would say fall. I've lived in the Midwest my entire life, so fall is, I think, spring doesn't exactly exist in the Midwest, and especially out here in Minneapolis, the summer is just a swampland, so I'm going to go fall.
Yeah, I'd go fall with summer dead last.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, I would go spring dead last just because, like Riley said, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I'm sure in some parts of the world it's beautiful, but not around here, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Where did you meet your significant others?
You can go first, Adam.
Bumble. It's a dating app.
Okay. I was like,
I knew what it was.
Okay. All right. I just figured I should clarify for anyone who didn't. Okay.
I met my significant other. She walked in freshman year of international business at our high school, and it was a love story ever since. A love story that took 6 years to get started, but otherwise that's how we
You
met.
had international business as a freshman in high school?
Well, let's be honest. I enjoyed it, but it was not the most difficult class on the planet. So we did have it, but it was not like a super impressive thing to add to your resume.
Still, we did not have that. All right. Did either of you do a spring break trip during college, or a trip like that at all?
Yeah, I did. I went to Myrtle Beach with a couple of my buddies. It was a lot of fun. A harrowing drive back is what I'll say. Certainly a lot of grip in the wheel. We had to drive all the way through the night, and I was just absolutely hungover as sin. And it was like a single lane bridge over a giant over a giant body of water, and all the other dudes in the car are asleep. Except for one guy in the back, and I'm like gripping the wheel. My eyes are completely wide open, and after like 30 more minutes, I have to stop. And I looked at the dude in the back who was awake, and he was like, "Yeah, it looked like you had it. It looked like you were doing okay." So I just didn't say anything. So, but yeah, it was a good time.
That's an amazing story. I do not have a spring break. I would just go back to like Milwaukee or just stick around Minneapolis. So I do not have a gripping the wheel at 4 a.m. driving from Myrtle Beach story, unfortunately, to rival Adams.
Yeah, I would not enjoy that drive at all. And the last one, job that you wanted as a kid.
Ooh, I wanted to be a chef. I'm okay at cooking these days. I would not call myself a chef, nor do I have aspirations to, but I would have wanted to be a chef when I was a kid.
Okay.
I think I wanted to be the
co-managing editor at Brew Hoop.
Yeah, I think I wanted to manage a small subset of fandom's blog. And I've achieved that goal. So, yeah. No, I don't know if I had any. I think I probably dabbled with wanting to be a farmer or something because I grew up on a farm, but no.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, those are all my rapid fire questions. So
Sweet.
That's great. Those are great, Kyle.
The spring break one, that's maybe my favorite answer of all these rapid fire questions we've had.
Here,
Yeah.
I have a rapid fire question for you guys. Is it impressive that the Bucks won 18 in a row, or are you skeptical?
You got to win 20, bro.
I thought all jokes aside, I mean, that's a hell of a take. Shout out to B-Ball Breakdown. That was amazing. But I did find it interesting. And I think this is in the midst of last night's game. So I don't know if it increased or whatever, but I think this is like only the fourth longest win streak in franchise history, which to me is absolutely insane. Like the quality of the team or the lack of quality of the other teams in the late 60s, early 70s, and in the 80s as well. Like, to put it in context, to still only be like the fourth longest winning streak to get to 18 in a row. And that's, I mean, regardless of the competition or the way the game is played or whatever, I think that's still impressive. So shout out to the team for 18 straight. And even though the haters aren't convinced, we are, guys. We certainly are.
Yeah, that's very much true. It's a great point that the Bucks are a very modern, mediocre franchise. They were really good for a long time. So, all right, let's move on to a segment we teased before the break. Riley, take us away on Vulture Talk.
I have some amazing stuff this week, guys. So we can either go out east or go out west. Which way do you want to start?
Start out east.
All right. So the latest that we have coming out of New York with the Knicks, who else could it be? It has to be the Knicks. And this is, I don't know if Stephen A. Smith is like a shadow member of the organization. He talks a little bit too much trash about Dolan to be, but I'm assuming he's somewhat clued into what's going on there. So according to Stephen A. Smith, the Knicks are considering hiring you-know-who, Jason Kidd, as head coach to try and tempt Giannis to join them in free agency. So just to keep track with everybody at home, the Knicks game plan has shifted a couple of times. It looks like now they're going to hire Jason Kidd. They're going to hire Masai Ujiri, so AKA two of Giannis's 60 father figures that he has. And those two are going to get together and convince Giannis to come to New York. I'm not sure. Does that seem feasible? I have no idea why Giannis, I mean, he's loyal and everything, but wouldn't even Giannis has to know that Jason Kidd was ass, right? Like even Giannis now under Bud has to realize the difference in coaching quality.
I think 100%. I'm just reading the full quote here, which is just delicious. Can I just read a little bit of it?
Yeah, go for it.
This is Stephen A. Smith. Let me tell you what's circulating in the NBA.
Yes.
Although like this is circulating, it's such BS. Okay. Although the Knicks deny this, but I got to tell both of you, Jason Kidd is potentially a preferred candidate because Jason Kidd coached 1 year in Brooklyn before leaving for Milwaukee. He's known for developing guys. Here's the kicker. Their belief is that Giannis, when he was fired in Milwaukee, Giannis was ticked off and wanted to leave. So by getting him to New York, it potentially gives them a better shot at Giannis. That is such delusional thinking. It's absolutely insane. And also, every time a coach has gotten fired, Giannis has reportedly been sad. Like, he was sad. Nick Van Iced Coffee Exel was, left him when they were playing their pickup games or whatever. Like, I think he got over it when he won 60 games and the MVP.
Yeah, I don't know. He's still holding that grudge. Giannis is like, he's sad when anybody leaves. Like, it doesn't matter to the player. He's like, I don't think I've seen one single player where Giannis is like, yeah, F that guy. Like, he's always been like, we would love to have him back. We loved having him here. Like, that's been Giannis's base answer to everything. And now, admittedly, it was really strange around the Jason Kidd. You guys remember the firing? And it was like Giannis was going to sacrifice himself like Christ all over again. And Jason Kidd was like, no, I have to take this one. Like, you have to go on to your destiny. It was just really weird.
People know the truth.
Yeah, I remember that. He was like, no, don't worry, the truth will come out or whatever. Like, what a strange era that whole was. Like, and it wasn't at the same day that the Bucks were going to play the Suns too, and I think they probably lost to the Suns. It was just a really weird era. Like, strange times. Jason Kidd.
Yeah, my thing is, if Giannis were to leave Milwaukee to go to a winner, why the hell would you go to the New York Knicks, who are the furthest things from ever winning as a franchise? That the franchise hasn't been good since I think Patrick Ewing was there, and I was maybe 4 years old. It's just a terrible franchise. Jim Dolan might be the worst owner in all of professional sports, and then you're going to tell me that this coach that was mediocre at best is really going to convince Giannis to join a winner when he currently has a coach that has not only taken him to an MVP level. They won 60 games last year. They're currently on an 18-game winning streak and look to surpass that 60 wins again. And then you're going to say, yes, the New York Knicks, the stable franchise that is New York for Giannis with a new family. Yeah, that I swear, out of all the teams you could say, the Knicks would be the last team I would expect any superstar to go to.
I'm surprised they don't try to play up like the Greek connection, because isn't there like a sizable Greek population in New York? Like maybe that would be a different angle, but
sizable population of every ethnic background.
Yeah,
New York
that's
goddamn
true.
city.
Yeah, no, it's your point is totally well taken, and I think any delusions that the Knicks have are going to just continue to be that delusions, which I don't really feel bad for them because they're, like you said, their owner sucks, but it's strange that we just continually keep hearing about the Knicks. Now, again, if they're able to get a couple of Giannis's dads like in the same organization, that might prove out for them. But otherwise, I'm not sure about their strategy.
Also, cost of living. I mean, Giannis was like just complaining that he was getting fined and that was going to take away diaper money. But like that's a lot less diapers in New York. Everything's a little more expensive out there. I feel like that is kind of interesting. I mean, I'm sure money isn't that big to him now, but like he's really mostly only ever known like a specific market's how much stuff is costing there. Like this is how much a house costs. I feel like there's still some level of obliviousness to him. I mean, considering like just 2 years ago, he tried to buy a practice court in a church as opposed to just build his own. Like, I feel like maybe he might be able to use some financial advice from you, actually, Riley. Maybe he should get on that.
Look, either Giannis can become a literal living god in Milwaukee, continue to be that, or he can be just like a pseudo also ran playing for a crappy team like the Knicks. So I mean, the choice should not be all that. Like this is a lot longer than I expected it to be, but going into everything, like you're saying, Kyle, like what other team? Yes, every team and their sister is lining up the cap space, but every team that he could go to, they're going to have to clear the decks for him and him alone, and then it's just going to be a freaking slog after that to build the team back up around him. Maybe there's like, who does he even buddy up with? Like, there's nobody I can think of off the top of my head who he's like a LeBron James will just figure it out to go here. Like this, the more I think about it, the less and less I think there's like a viable, unless he's okay with he wants the market and he's okay with it being a bit of a slog for a couple of years, which I can't imagine given just how much he's able to do in the offseason and still be able to do even in Milwaukee. So that would just be a really, in my opinion, strange decision just given the circumstances. But I don't know.
Ironically, the closest person that you can think of that he could buddy up with to play in New York is Kristaps Porzingis.
Yeah. Or like maybe he wants to go play with his brother in LA, but we could just, I mean, I don't know. We already signed Thanasis. We could just go sign Kostas too. Like,
wait till Alex is NBA eligible and just get him on the team.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. But speaking about weird strategies to get Giannis, we got one more. We got to head out west now. Another really sad, I mean, just deplorable franchise. I'm going to kick dirt all over them because they suck. So the Golden State Warriors, they're considering, because they are the worst team in the league right now, and I should say this, they're only considering, but if they get the number one overall pick, they think about maybe offering that for Giannis to the Bucks, and that is per a site called Pro Sports Daily. I would not suggest going there because you will get a virus, but they said they got that report from the San Francisco Chronicle. So apparently they're not convinced that they would give up the number one pick for Giannis, but it is something they might do. So that's another interesting strategy for the Warriors to go after.
It's so generous of them.
Yeah, exactly.
In a draft that everyone says is really weak, and no one knows who the number one pick would be. That's really
probably
cool.
is LaMelo Ball.
Yeah, please, God, no. My God.
Which is ironic, which is weird because he's actually doing a really good job in Australia, all things considered.
Yeah, but okay, you're going from Giannis to
Yeah, I know.
LaMelo Ball. Like,
I think my favorite part of this whole thing was that the Warriors would trade. It's like, who would you trade? What players would you trade over to match salaries and convince Milwaukee, yes, this is a great deal?
if that's really
There's no
their
deal.
if their thinking is like, I think any team that thinks like, oh, we'll be able to corner the Bucks, like the amount of hubris you have to be like, oh, well, we'll give this other team this first round pick and that'll convince them. Like, just get out of here. That's so dumb. A lot of the teams, and I think the Warriors are probably very near the top, mostly because of their ownership, but just the franchise as a whole. There's like I don't want to say like entitlement, but their heads are a little bit up their rears, which is fine. And this is a good gut check season. But I think there's this weird restructuring of the NBA going on right now where it's like, okay, these teams that were dominant are falling off. And you got a team like Milwaukee that's so good right now where we don't have to listen to your stupid offer for a first round pick and like maybe like a conditional second or whatever. Like we're the Milwaukee Bucks now, dude. You have to listen to our demands, Well, and that's what makes. Go for it.
Oh, no, I was going to say, it feels like with the Warriors, it's a bunch of hedge fund bros that think they could manipulate and trick some sucker into their deals in which how they were able to get said millions, billions of dollars being hedge fund bros with parents that also gave the money, except they forgot that the Milwaukee Bucks ownership is a bunch of hedge fund bros as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know where they get the idea. There's no trade. Even if they were to offer their first round pick for the next 10 years and Steph and Clay, I still would not take that trade because there's no realistic scenario in which Milwaukee would trade Giannis. Because I think we said this last week. Even if Giannis said, I'm not coming back, they would most likely just say, all right, screw it. We're just going to kick the tires and go for one last run. They're not going to trade him. It would be absolutely idiotic. And if they wanted to see a fan base not show up to games anymore, kind of like what you're saying. The hubris to assume that they could manipulate and swindle some sucker is kind of laughable.
Adam, any Golden State? Yeah, go for it.
No takes on the Golden State Warriors.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of laughable, it sounds like Kyle, you might have. It's time for your film review. Seems like it might have been a laugher.
Yes, it was. It was the movie The Spy Who Dumped Me, which stars Mila Kunis and Kate McKinnon. So a great comedy duo right there. The movie actually is really, really good. It's kind of got the comedy that you would want. It's got the action. Without spoiling too much, basically Mila Kunis and Kate McKinnon have to travel throughout the world to figure out some CIA / Black Ops / you don't trust anyone. And you don't really know who the bad guy is until the end. It was very entertaining. Lots of action and it's kind of gory as well. So just an FYI for those that don't enjoy a lot of blood and stuff like that. It does get a little out of hand, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a good balance. It was a good action comedy movie, which you don't really get many quality of nowadays. And again, the cast, it's pretty underrated. So it's not, like I said, Mila Kunis and Kate McKinnon are really the only two main stars. I know Hassan Minaj is in it, and he has a good part in it as well. But just from start to finish, it's a very quick pace, which I liked as well. So even though I think it was close to 2 hours, it didn't feel that way. It was able to just keep on moving, which kind of allows the plot to keep going. And if you miss something, then you definitely can get lost. But I kind of appreciate that as well because I want a movie that needs me to continuously pay attention compared to I could doze off for 5 to 10 minutes and I miss something. I feel like as a TV show, that's fine if it's kind of slow and the pace is slower. But in a movie, it's like, all right, let's go. Let's keep me entertained from start to finish as much as possible. So good movie. Would recommend people watch it.
All right, 2 quick questions about it. So, as every week, 1 out of 10, good movie. What would you give 1 out of 10? Just gut check.
I'd say 7.
Okay, good. Second question. I know Mila Kunis was born in the Soviet Union, like the late Soviet Union. Was she required to speak Russian at all in the movie?
No.
Okay, I wasn't sure if there. I think that's something. I'm curious why more, whatever places that cast her. Maybe that's just what she doesn't want to do that. But I know she speaks fluent Russian, so I'm surprised they don't do that more often as like a character arc. But that's all.
Yeah, because I was gonna say they were in Austria for a while. They were in Germany. I think they were in France. So it was definitely around like Western Europe more than Eastern Europe.
Sorry, I just Googled it because I was going to ask you guys how much you think it made at the box office, and there's just
I looked it up.
I never know with box office numbers anymore.
Go for it, Em. Lead it up.
There's just one review clip in here that's really good. It's with a 120-minute runtime, The Spy Who Dumped Me is at least an hour longer than it needed to be, which is just so brutal. Oh my god! How much?
Not completely wrong. Like there's like Em and I were saying that like if she had done like these three things, you could have cut the movie in half. But at the same time, it's kind of a hindsight. It's definitely a hindsight. Like, well, if she had done this, then you wouldn't have to go through all these other hoops. That's kind of the point of the movie. It's like you don't know what to believe and who the good guys and bad guys are until the end.
All right. Well, I remember being intrigued by it, so I'm glad you reviewed this one, Kyle. I honestly forgot about it.
Yeah, I think it's on. I want to say it's on Amazon Prime. I think it's either on Amazon Prime or Netflix. One of the two. Maybe Hulu. I don't remember where we watched it, but it was on streaming. It was on streaming. It was on a streaming service.
It's hard to remember where you watch stuff now.
Do you guys have a ton of those subscriptions? Sorry.
What?
Do you have a lot of those subscriptions, you guys? Do you both have like the Netflix, the Hulu, the Amazon? Do you have like the whole suite or no?
Yeah. Well, because Disney Plus had their bundle with Hulu and ESPN Plus, we have that. And then Emma has Amazon Prime, so we have that one. And then I had Netflix, so I have that. I think I pretty much have a lot. I don't have like HBO or Showtime or any of those cable channel subscriptions.
So, well, if that's the case, so we don't have to talk any further than that, but I am curious. So because I'm out of, and Adam as well, we're out of market, so we can just watch on League Pass for the most part. How do you watch the games, Cal? Can you get it through Hulu, or what service do you use to watch it?
So I just use the Fox Sports Go app and then use my parents' cable login to watch it.
Really praying Fox Sports or they don't listen to this like, wait, what is he doing? He's using his parents' account and they shut you down.
That would be unfortunate, but yeah, that's how I watch it. Is I use the Fox Sports Go and parents login. I'm not, because I don't have that level of Hulu where you can stream sports live, because I know that's what a lot of people are able to do is watch Fox Sports Wisconsin through Hulu, but that just seems like a lot more extra money that I don't need to spend.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to watch games out of market, thank goodness. And even then, it's still not super easy just because of all the national games and all that. But yeah. Yeah,
the national games always bug. It's the NBA TV games that bug me because they're never good matchups and they're always blacked out. And I don't know why. I don't know why they don't just offer it as like you can pay 10 extra bucks or something and then you get access to those via League Pass. It is the dumbest thing for me personally. I hate it so much.
Yeah, it's dumb.
Yeah. We're also, all of us millennials are in for a rude awakening when our parents cut the cord.
I don't think my parents will ever do it, thankfully.
Yeah, it's going to be, that's going to be tough.
I'm in a lot of trouble trying to watch sports in general.
I just use my brother as a meat shield. He buys all the packages and I just use his login information. So shout out to my brother for that. He's going to keep on keeping on. So good for him.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, shout out to Brother Feldman. The only other game next week is against the Knicks, which
it's the Knicks.
Yeah. I feel like that's about all we have to say about
there's another game. What are you talking about? There's two games.
Wait, the Mavericks game?
No, so the Mavs, Lakers, Knicks, and Pacers. They played the Pacers on Sunday. Well, I guess between now and the next time we record, it might not.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's smart.
Well, they beat the Pacers as well, so it's fine.
Whoa! You think that's the case? Hold on.
Oh yeah.
Let's go through predictions first before we say that.
I almost feel like, I know we don't usually record at night. I feel like we got to figure out what we're going to do with that one.
It really depends on if Malcolm plays. If Malcolm plays, then we might have to do the live stream of the podcast with the game. That might have to happen.
Did you guys see he's growing a mustache?
Yeah, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look great.
No, guys, as someone who took a long time to grow a mustache, like several months, and then even when it was okay, people still said it looked terrible. It looks great. Okay, it looks really good.
I think
I'm
what's
proud
the
of him.
problem is the one shot that I saw, it was like really zoomed in on his face, so his face was pixelated, so it looked like it was drawn on. I'm sure from a distance it looks fine, but in the one picture I saw, I was like, that is not a flattering look. So
I think the biggest thing is it's a thin. I'm not a fan of thin mustaches. Like it's too. I'm not like the pencil like thin mustache. I don't like. Like just make that sucker as big and bushy as possible. And maybe it's because that's if when
Okay, but Kyle, you can't always do that. You know.
Look, I'm sorry
getting
that
really
I
personal
totally
on the
have
podcast.
the sloppiest facial hair set up known to man right now because I'm too lazy to shave.
some good mustache talk at the
okay.
end of the pod. Really good.
Yeah. All right. Anyway. Okay. So yeah. So we'll figure out what we're doing with that Pacers game. But yeah, Mavs, Lakers, Knicks, Pacers next week for the Bucks. This has been the Brew Hoop podcast. Read all of our stuff on brewhoop.com. Follow us on Twitter at brewhoop. Tune in and like and subscribe to the pod. Please share it with your friends if you want to. And we'll be back again next week. All right. We're done.